Will the migrant issue influence the upcoming U.S. midterm elections? Here to offer her insights is political analyst Eleanor Clift. Thank you so much for joining us,
Glad to be with you.
As we saw, migrant issue a big concern. How much do you think foreign policy will play a role in these midterm elections? How much have they played traditionally, and how much could they play this time?
Well, it depends how you define foreign policy. And I think that relations with Mexico and the immigration issue is seen as a domestic issue. I don't think American voters view it as foreign policy. They view it very much as a direct threat to their livelihood. And this president got elected in part by raising fears about migrants coming in and kind of taking over. Now, the facts don't bear that out, but the demographics in this country have changed pretty rapidly, and so he is playing on people's fears, and you find the highest anxiety about migrants are in areas that don't really have any. And so the fact that he's out there campaigning in rallies, 4 or 5 of them a week, raising these fears, I think has contributed in part to what we're seeing in a tightening in the polls, whereas the Democrats were expected to do quite well. They're still given a very good chance of regaining the majority in the House, but it's not a certainty, and the Senate looks like it will remain in Republican hands. And so this president is having an impact with this issue and with his sloganeering around it. I mean, he's very good at developing these rather hateful slogans, but they stick in people's minds.
Is this essentially a referendum on Donald Trump? What's at stake here?
I think every midterm is a referendum on the president in power, and usually a president whose poll ratings are below 50%, well below, as President Trump's is, they usually stay out of sight and they don't go out on the campaign trail. But with this, just like so many other things, he's defying what we've always done in the past, and he says, yes, this is about me, and if you don't vote for me in whatever form your vote takes in this election, you'll have mob rule from the Democrats. And his rhetoric really goes way over the line in what we expect from any politician, but especially from a president.
What do you think about all this talk about possible interference in the midterms? We had just had a woman from Russia who was accused of meddling into the midterms.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case, and it went on before the 2016 election, and it continues. And I think the most recent indictment was not part of the Robert Mueller investigation looking into collusion from the Trump campaign. This is the Justice Department getting involved in this. And what we're learning is that the Russians have intervened on both sides, but I think more on behalf of the right than the left. But their goal is simply to just sow discord. And so every element of a contentious argument is raised. And so they've succeeded. Now, maybe we could have done this on our own and gotten so angry at each other, but they certainly have weighed in very dominantly in social media, creating the discord and the distrust in government that we see today.
Let's turn to voters themselves. How much does turnout matter? Isn't it traditionally relatively low, and could that change this time around?
Midterm elections, the electorate is usually smaller, whiter, and older, which translates into Republican dominance, which is why they do traditionally quite well in the midterms. Democrats and the Democratic resistance that was born, the day after President Trump was elected with this massive women's march in Washington and actually cities across the country and indeed the world. There's an enthusiasm out there on the Democratic side that we haven't seen before. But typically, midterm turnout is well under 50%. And in 2014, only 1 in 5 of the millennials, young people, voted. So for the Democrats to do well, they've got to get turnout up really to like 55, 57%. That's still not good in a country where we should really prize the vote as the basic ticket of admission to a democratic society. But it looks like we will have a strong turnout, and the president is rallying his base. So it's very much what we call a base mobilization election, us versus them, basically. And we'll see, which side has more voters show up.
You touched on this a little bit. Some say women voters, female candidates will play a big role in this elections. Can you talk about that?
Oh, hundreds of female candidates in congressional races and several Senate races, some that are female versus female. No, women are very much dominating this election season, mostly on the Democratic side, but there are some Republican women out there as well. There's a Republican candidate running for the Senate in Arizona who's a former fighter pilot who said she wants to go to Washington to show them how to grow a pair of ovaries. So, and if the Democrats do get the majority in the House, it will be because suburban women, college educated, who typically vote Republican, they are really put off by this president. They're going to make the difference in those suburban districts that the Democrats have to win if they want to get back even a small toehold of power in Washington.
Well, we'll probably have you back to analyze how this all plays out.
Good.